Most people write off memory slips as just part of getting older. You forget a name, you lose your keys, you walk into a room and can't remember why, and everyone around you says, "That's normal, it happens to all of us." But here's what those people don't tell you. Some of those slips aren't normal at all. Some of them are your brain sending a distress signal, and the longer you ignore it, the narrower your window gets to do something about it. Early dementia doesn't start with forgetting who you are or where you live. It starts with things so small and so ordinary that most people wave them off without a second thought. Today, we're going to go through 10 specific warning signs, and for each one, I'm going to give you a clear line between what's normal aging and what actually needs attention. Pay attention because one sign on this list affects more than 50% of adults over 50, and almost nobody connects it to brain health. Stay tuned because that one comes later and it might surprise you. Sign number one is forgetting words mid-sentence. Now, everybody loses a word sometimes. You're talking, and a name or a term just sits on the tip of your tongue for a second before it comes back. That's normal. What's not normal is when this happens constantly, multiple times a day, and the word never actually comes back. You end up pointing at the refrigerator because the cold thing is all your brain will give you. When word retrieval starts failing this frequently, the hippocampus and language processing regions are under real pressure. And that's worth taking seriously rather than laughing off. Sign number two is getting lost in familiar places. You might be surprised how often people dismiss this one. Imagine driving to the grocery store you visited every week for 6 years and suddenly feeling genuinely disoriented. Not just distracted, but confused about where you are and how you got there. Spatial memory lives in a specific region of the brain that early cognitive decline targets early. And when that region is under stress, familiar environments stop feeling familiar. 1 or 2 moments of distraction while driving is not the issue. A growing pattern of spatial confusion in places you know by heart is a different story entirely. Sign number three is repeating yourself without realizing it. This one is tricky because the person doing it usually has no awareness that it's happening. Telling the same story twice in one sitting, or asking the same question you asked 10 minutes ago, points directly to short-term memory breaking down faster than it should. The brain simply isn't encoding new information the way it used to. A close family member often catches this before the person does, which is why you might want to ask someone who spends time with you if they've noticed a pattern, even if you haven't. Now, those 3 signs all look like memory problems, so they're at least somewhat expected on a list like this. But the next group of signs is harder to spot because on the surface, they don't look like memory problems at all. Sign 4 is mood swings and personality shifts. If someone who spent decades being calm, patient, and even-tempered suddenly becomes irritable, anxious, or withdrawn without any obvious life event driving it, that shift shouldn't be chalked up to stress or a bad week. The amygdala and frontal lobe, the brain regions that regulate emotion and social behavior, are directly affected in early cognitive decline. Research from the Alzheimer's Association has identified personality changes as one of the earliest behavioral markers, often appearing before any noticeable memory loss. Don't ignore a shift in who someone is. That's the brain changing, not just a mood. Sign 5 is trouble following conversations or TV shows. You might be surprised how many people blame this on distraction or bad writing. But losing the thread of a conversation in a group setting or needing to rewind a show repeatedly because the plot isn't sticking points to processing speed slowing down. The brain takes longer to absorb organize and retain incoming information, so anything moving at a normal pace starts feeling like too much. This is different from being tired. It's consistent, it's frustrating, and it tends to get worse over time rather than better. Sign 6 is poor judgment and impulsive decision-making. The prefrontal cortex, which handles reasoning, risk assessment, and impulse control, is one of the first regions affected in early dementia. This shows up as falling for obvious scams, making large financial decisions without thinking them through, or ignoring risks that would have been obvious before. Many families only recognize this sign in hindsight after money is lost or a bad decision has already been made. If someone close to you has started making choices that feel completely out of character, that's worth a conversation with the doctor. Many people blame signs 4 through 6 on stress, poor sleep, or just getting older, and that's exactly why they go undiagnosed for years. But the next group of signs moves away from behavior entirely, because your body may already be showing you what's happening inside your brain. Signs 7 to 10, your body is telling you what your brain can't. Sign 7 is loss of smell, and this is the one that affects more than 50% of adults over 50 without them ever connecting it to brain health. Olfactory function, your sense of smell, is processed by brain regions that sit right next to the areas most vulnerable to early neurological damage. Studies from Columbia University and the National Institute on Aging both found that a declining sense of smell often appears years before any memory symptoms surface. So if food has been tasting blander, or smells you used to notice just aren't registering anymore, don't write it off as a sinus issue without ruling out something more serious. Sign 8 is sleep disruption, and not just ordinary insomnia. The specific pattern to pay attention to here is acting out dreams physically, having vivid and violent nightmares, or thrashing during sleep. This is called REM sleep behavior disorder, and it's a documented early warning sign for both Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's disease. The brain regions that normally suppress physical movement during dreaming stop working properly, so the body starts acting out what the brain is experiencing. A bed partner often reports this before the sleeper even knows it's happening. If that sounds familiar, bring it up with a neurologist, not just a sleep specialist. Sign 9 is balance and coordination problems. A sudden change in the way someone walks, shuffling steps, slowing down, a new tendency to stumble, can reflect stress on the cerebellum and the motor control networks connecting it to the rest of the brain. This is separate from muscle weakness or joint pain, which have their own causes. When the gait changes without a clear orthopedic reason, the brain is a reasonable place to look. Falls in adults over 60 are one of the leading reasons cognitive decline gets discovered, often because a fall triggers neurological testing that hadn't been done before. Sign 10 is social withdrawal, pulling away from friends, skipping activities someone used to enjoy, avoiding family gatherings. This is one of the earliest behavioral changes documented in Alzheimer's research, and it almost always gets misread as depression or introversion. What's actually happening is that the brain is starting to struggle with the cognitive load of social interaction. Conversations require real-time processing, memory, and emotional regulation all at once. And when those systems are under stress, people instinctively avoid the situations that expose the difficulty. So if someone in your life has quietly stopped showing up, that's worth a closer look. These 10 signs don't mean dementia is certain. They mean your brain is asking for help right now, while there's still time to respond. Pick the 2 signs from this list that feel most familiar to you and bring them up with your doctor this week. Don't wait for things to get worse before you take it seriously. Catching this early gives you real options. Sleep, diet, movement, and stress management can all slow this process down when you start, before the damage compounds. And if you want to know what's either protecting your brain or quietly working against it every single day, the next video covers exactly that.